Let me add some CSS to make the div recognizable. And I'll set its draggable attribute to true. And run this page just as it is on a set of different browsers. I just want to see the difference in behavior. Here's Internet Explorer. When I try to drag this item, since it is draggable, it has a drag image. It has the same on Opera. Same for Google Chrome. And also for Edge. There's a difference in the different kinds of images. Nevertheless, all of them have a drag image. That's called the drag image of a draggable item. All of them have it except for Firefox. I'm trying to drag the item in Firefox, but it has no drag image. That's what I wanted to investigate, so I made a Stack Overflow question about it. And then here's the question I made, saying that I have a div and I put some CSS on it and I tried to drag it, but it doesn't drag on Firefox. But if I run the same question on another browser, say Opera or Chrome or anywhere else, just because this draggable is true, this browser, each browser other than Firefox, will display the drag image appropriately. I set out to investigate why this is. I didn't get a satisfactory response from this guy. This guy just copied and pasted somebody else's answer over here. And this answer seems to suggest that, here's the answer. It says that in Firefox, unless you add an event listener for the drag start event, and also set some data on the data transfer object, the drag image doesn't appear. This answer is quite correct, but I want a more satisfactory explanation as to why my image wasn't showing up on Firefox. And especially, as you will see in my question, I later added this drag start event handler. In the document ready, I added jQuery reference and then I added an event handler for the drag start, and still nothing would happen. Let me show you that first. So let me add jQuery over here. I'll add a reference to the jQuery library from Google. I'll add a custom script. Let me go and write this file. And here in the document ready, let me define for the div on drag start. This guy, and I'll just write to the console. It doesn't matter what I do over here. But I have a handler now, and I have a reference to the jQuery library and this library, that this custom file. So with this difference, let's see if it makes any difference in Firefox. Okay, now it's showing me my script. And if I look at the console, it should issue a console log statement. The drag event has started. So it did enter my event, but you can see that there's no drag image. The drag event count, the drag started event count is increasing, but there's no image to go with it. This is what I wanted to investigate. So here's my finding anyway. Let's try out not using jQuery for a moment. So I will not use jQuery. And I'll delete everything over here. Let this CSS file remain as it is, but I'll delete everything and just use plain old HTML based event handlers or event listeners in the markup. So let's add an event listener for on drag start for this guy, and I'll set it to, in fact, let me not delete everything from this. I just don't need the document ready. I need my drag start event handler. So I'll just call this event handler with an event from the HTML markup, and this ideally should work. But this also doesn't work, as you will see. Yes, it has been updated. Let's close developer tools and try and drag this, and I see that there's no drag image yet. So let me, in this handler, as the answer suggests, you have to provide a handler and you have to set something on the data transfer object. So I'll just set some text type data on the data transfer object, and it contains that it should work now, and it will work now. Okay, it still doesn't. Sorry, there was a spelling error. I'm not sure if this should be on or on drag start or just drag start. Let me try both of them. I think it should be on now. Yeah. Okay, so it works now, which means if I add the event listener in the markup, it works. Let's see if I add the event listener not in the markup, but in the JavaScript file, but without using jQuery, just using simple JavaScript. Does it work then? So I'll write an ify, and in this ify I'll say yeah, I'll just set the event listener for I'll just get the element by ID. I'll say the draggable item is document.get element by ID, and I think I call it the div, and I'll say draggable items add event listener for drag start event handler to be this function drag start event handler, and this also should work. I'll remove this. I've removed the event listener from the markup, and if I refresh the page now, I will just cross check. Yes, I have my new code, and if I try to drag the item, I do get the drag image. So this code works. And the question is, it's working in JavaScript whether I set it in the markup or in the body. It's not working in jQuery. That's the observation. Why is that? Let's go back. Let's remove this code and let's go back and do some jQuery again to find out what the hell is happening. So I've added a reference to the jQuery library again, and I'll go back and set my document ready handler, and I'll say, I don't know, on the document, whether I do document.on the div set for, I'm sorry, on the event is called drag start for the div. This should be the handler. If I do this, it doesn't work. But does it fire the event? It doesn't show the image, but does it fire the event? Let's see. We've got our new code. If I do this, I see no image. But did it issue a console statement? Yes, it did. And it also tells me the error actually. I'll come to that, but for now, forget the error. It does issue a console statement every time I do this. So our code is working, it's just not showing the image. That's the question of questions. Or even if I do it directly on the div itself, if I remove this, even then our event is triggered, but there's no image. I'll clear the log and I see that we have our console statements. I also see that we have our new code. Now, as to why this is not working, if you look at the console and the errors tab, if you enable the errors, you will see that the data transfer object doesn't exist on the event object. Now that's surprising. Why is that? It does exist, I know that. Probably because the event that jQuery sends is not the DOM event, the drag event, DOM event. Maybe it does something else. So to test that, let's look at the debugger. I'll open the debugger. I will set a breakpoint inside this, and I want to inspect what type this is. Obviously there's no type here, but what contents does this have? So let's just break here. When I break here, I want to go and look at the locals. All the scopes has different kinds of scopes. This is the drag event handler scope. This is the stack for the variable stack for this function, and here's our guy that we're interested in. Now this event should have a data transfer property, but it doesn't. In fact, it looks like a normal DOM event, the plain global event object rather than a custom event. And it has in fact an original event property which has the default value drag start, and this looks like the original event that would have been issued by the DOM as a drag event object, but jQuery, it seems, wraps this object up, and this object then should have a property named data transfer. There it is, our data transfer object. So actually, if I change my code and say this dot, if this is a jQuery event, then it should be this dot let e equals event, or event dot, let data transfer equals event dot data transfer, or event dot original event dot data transfer. One of them is definitely going to have data transfer, and if I'm using jQuery, I can actually just omit this and just write event dot original event dot data transfer. Either ways it will work. Let's do both and see. Now it should work. If I did this, remove the call stack out of view, it works. Even if I go back and change the code to make it so that it works either for plain old JavaScript or jQuery, either ways, I'll go back, save this, refresh the page, and see we have our code that's going to work for both jQuery or plain old JavaScript, and it does work. So that's the detective work. So I'm going to write a Stack Overflow answer to this one with a link to this video. I hope that definitely clarifies it for me very satisfactorily, and I hope it does it for anyone else who's looking for this answer. Thank you. Oh, and by the way, I'm starting an online course for people who want to learn how to program a computer, but right now they're computer novices. So if you're someone, or you know someone, a relative or a friend who's a complete newbie, probably in a different career, maybe they are a hairstylist, maybe they are a mechanical engineer and they want to switch careers over a long period of time, they want to learn how to program a computer, then I've got an online course I'm starting in about a month's time. I haven't announced the details yet, but if you want an email when the details are announced, go to my website satyaish.net, please, and this header at the beginning that tells you that you can sign up for my mailing list if you need details. in an email as soon as the course is launched. So if you click the mailing list link, and here's the mailing list control, and please join the mailing list, and I'll send you an email as soon as the course is launched.
Swarupa Shivoham Shivoham.
When you come back, you're pulled back out of the shape of the person, because that's the only area where you experience these traumatic states, and because you become personal with them. There's a strong identity functioning in that. There's a collaboration, there's a relationship with the patterns that we are living and experiencing. So where does it come? Actually, it comes originally from the self. The self has projected or portrayed itself in the form of a person. Like I say, it makes a self-portrait of itself as a person. And it generates the necessary energies to support, which is the belief in an identity that comes from the consciousness and then gets infused into the identity or into the notion of a person. Yes, so it is the person itself, which is its background, the background of the personal mode. So it's not actually, the person is not really true, it's not the truth, it's imagined. It's imagined from the self. So I call it the imaginary self or imagined self. And it's this sense of the person that is experiencing all these kind of crises and difficulties, and he's feeling in some way distracted by or caught up in its own projections, but it doesn't see it as just merely projections. It tends to feel that those projections, those tendencies, they're external to it, and its forces coming in on it. But actually they have their root in the identity. And the fact is that it's very difficult once we're in the state of turmoil and identity to sort of step away. The energy doesn't seem to be there to step away, but more to be involved and to keep churning somehow the mind into these states which just produce the sense of suffering. You see, in the inquiry, you are invited to step back or to look from the place, or to recognize that these states are effects arising or appearing inside the consciousness. In the beginning, there's resistance to looking because we tend to feel pulled in, and we just want to somehow hammer at the thing from the thing that we're experiencing. But I say to take a look at that and to use that feeling of suffering and pain and anxiety, and it's very mental, very psychological, very emotional. Use them to see if you can locate the one who is suffering them. Now, it may seem initially that this is obvious, but it is not so obvious. It's just obviously a habit. It's obviously taken to be truth, so we don't question it. That's how deep it has embedded itself in the consciousness. Just stop for a moment. Don't try to stop all the noise of the mind and the emotions and the feelings. Let them go there. Use them now to see, okay, who is being attacked by them? And please take that question. Don't just, even the reaction to it, even that also is perceived, you see? But who actually is the victim of this scenario? Can you actually locate the sufferer? And for this you must be very, very quiet and really hear the question that you're asking, understand what you're asking, but you're being asked, you see. Can the sufferer be found? And just because the question now is being picked up and followed to see if there's truth in the question, if there is really the sufferer, to try and find the sufferer, the experience is that there is no sufferer. It cannot be found. It is not found. In all these years where this inquiry has happened, the sufferer as an entity cannot be found. And in that non-finding, somehow, all the force and the power of this torturous and suffering states, they start to collapse. Because there's no proof of anyone who's suffering them. And that actually transforms, it actually creates, or not create, but it reveals the deeper underlying state of peace, which is untouched, that really nothing is happening, it's all created here.